Welcome back, everybody. Eric here. I hope everybody is doing well and having a wonderful holiday season. I know I'm ready for Christmas. As these videos are dropping, we're getting very close to Christmas, and I hope everyone has a wonderful time with their families. And I want to get into some more questions, okay? And I've got a real doozy of one. Someone asked, hey, can a suppressor really be movie quiet? Well, what does it mean when we say movie quiet with a suppressor? We're going to get into this question. I think the answer might be a little more complex than you might think. And you may come away from this with some cool knowledge, okay? So we're going to get into this. Before we do, I would like to thank our friends at Sonoran Desert Institute for supporting our videos. If you're looking for a career in the world of gunsmithing, or you want to start a gun business, run an FFL, anything along those lines, fly drones, they have awesome programs, distance learning programs that will help you in those efforts. Check them out. They've got awesome instructors, great curriculum, wonderful programs. Check them out, Sonoran Desert Institute, and tell them that Eric sent you. There's a link down in the description box below if you decide you want to go check out the school. But Sonoran Desert Institute is awesome. Check them out, and they're a longtime supporter of the channel. Okay, so we're going to get into this. So when we talk about suppressors being movie quiet, I think that Hollywood has sort of caused a little bit of a negative stigma with suppressors, because what do you see in Hollywood movies, right? Usually someone who's using a suppressor is an assassin, all right? And you hear this little tiny little boop, little tiny sound, and the gun goes off and you hardly hear it and everything like that. Is that what really happens? Are suppressors really that quiet? Well, it depends, okay? And I guess that's really where the rubber meets the road here. I know many of you have probably seen, numerous posts all over the internet where people will talk about, like, they'll go to a machine gun shoot, for instance, or they'll go to some sort of a public shoot or a range or something, and they'll hear somebody shooting an AR-15 suppressed. Well, if you've heard an AR-15 suppressed, it's actually not that quiet. There's a very loud crack, and you would think, well, wait a minute, this thing's supposed to be suppressed. Why is it so loud? It's because there's a few things going on that are worthy of discussion, okay? Once that projectile leaves the barrel, and goes through the suppressor, the gases begin to cool through a series of baffles, okay? Now, this is a CZ Tico. This is an integral suppressed 22 caliber rimfire rifle. And I chose this particular gun to show off here because this is a really good example of what our baffles look like. Now, in this particular situation here, what's happened with this suppressor is a tube was put over this barrel and the baffles were cut directly into the barrel, okay? So this is a bull barrel that's been turned down meticulously, and it's been cut back and recrowned here at about, I think it's about an 8 or 9 inch barrel. And then we have a long suppressor with a whole bunch of volume, and you have the gases which expand through these chambers, and they cool as they exit the barrel, and it makes the gun a lot quieter. Okay, so this particular one is a rimfire, and it is, now this, in terms of, if we say movie quiet, this is the closest thing to a movie quiet rig that you're going to come across. I have a full video on this gun if you want to check it out, and you can see just how quiet this thing actually is. It is ridiculously quiet. There's a few reasons. One is because it's a bolt-action rifle. So the only thing you really hear when this gun fires is this. That's it. You hear the striker dropping. That's all you hear. This thing makes absolutely zero sound. It is completely quiet. It makes more sound going down range and hitting the target. You hear that more than you hear the actual report of the rifle. Well, why is an AR-15 so loud? That's because an AR-15 is essentially like a 22 on steroids. So you have the high velocity of the projectile leaving the suppressor. It causes a supersonic crack, okay? And you hear this really loud pop sound, and you think, well, wait a minute, this thing has a can on it. How in the world can it be so loud? Well, if the projectile has time to break the supersonic barrier and cause a crack, you're going to hear a crack. Now, let's say you're using something like a Daniel Defense Mark 18 with a suppressor. That's a really good example, okay? And let's say your shots are within 8 or 10 yards or something, really close, right? Like, say you're close to the berm, all right? And you just try to crack a few shots through a suppressor. You'll notice you hear kind of a thud. It's not quite as loud as if you were to back off 100 feet and fire the same Mark 18 with the same load into the same berm. You'll notice you're going to hear a considerable crack. That's because that projectile is breaking the sound barrier. That's what we call supersonic, when a projectile breaks the sound barrier. When the projectile is moving faster than the speed of sound, it provides a supersonic crack, which in itself is quite loud. Okay? So when we're talking rimfires, now with a suppressor on a pistol that's a 22 caliber pistol or a 22 caliber rifle like this Tico, it's always going to be ammo specific. So if I'm using a supersonic 22 long rifle round out of a long 16-inch barrel with a suppressor, well, that gun is still going to be very loud because you're still going to get a modest crack even out of a suppressor. But if I take, let's say a subsonic bullet or something that's right on the edge of being subsonic, let's say, I don't know what the exact feet per second is, but let's just call it 900 feet per second or slower, or maybe it might be 1100 feet per second or something. I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head. But a pistol bullet, like a 45 ACP or a 32 ACP or a 380 or a 9 millimeter that's like a 147 grain 9 millimeter or a 158 that is slightly subsonic, we're saying, sub 1,000 feet per second or 1,100 feet per second round, it is not going to have a supersonic crack. So it's not only the suppressor cooling the gases and making the sound of the actual, the report of the pistol or rifle greatly subdued and let's say movie quiet, it's also the ammo being quiet enough to not break the sound barrier and cause a big disturbance in the air around it. So when you hear a pistol in a movie, usually it's some assassin with a suppressor, and what do? They put the gun like right up towards the person and they assassinate them or whatever they're going to do, or some spy movie. I mean, there's tons of movies where people use suppressors, and it's always a spy or an assassin or something like that. And they always get relatively close. Maybe they're in an elevator, right? And they're in a close quarter environment, right? There's nowhere for that sound to go. It's muffled. It's greatly muffled. And there's been a lot of situations with, like, especially with KGB hits and even, let's just say, some hits that our own government has done in the past. So I'm not going to say who or where, but there's been situations where, I mean, look, like every government kills people, right? It's the nature of it. But there's been situations where, on an elevator, a 32 ACP, even with no suppressor. We're talking a pistol with no suppressor, a 32 ACP, and what do? They put it right up in their armpit in an elevator, crank 2 rounds, and what do they just do? They basically use your body as a suppressor. So, when they say movie quiet with a suppressor, there are situations where, yes, a suppressor can be movie quiet, such as this Tico. This is the most movie quiet gun I have. That's why I showed it off here, because it's a very, very quiet. And if you check out the video, you'll see what I'm talking about. Now, I haven't talked about this other pistol. This is an M&P. This is an M&P 45. Okay, this one has 13-shot magazines. And yes, this has a 45 caliber suppressor on it, and is very, very, very quiet. But that's because all of your, 45 ACP is subsonic. Okay, so generally, now if you have a 200 grain 45 ACP or maybe something crazy, like I've seen some 185s out there and things like that, they probably will break the sound barrier a bit and crack a bit. But if you're talking a nominal 230 grain ball round in a 45 ACP, this gun is ridiculously quiet. And you're talking a 45 ACP. So this is something that has a decent amount of energy, good stopping power. This is definitely not some little 22, right? And it's still movie quiet. Well, how can it do that? Because a 230 grain bullet moving at a slow speed doesn't break the sound barrier. And this suppressor, this is a Tyrant 45. This is an older AAC Tyrant. This one is a pre-M model. So some of the later ones were the modular ones that you could, change over into a shorter configuration. This is an older pre-M model Tyrant. So this is just a full-length Tyrant. A little long of a can, a little long and ungainly. However, good volume. So it's very, very quiet with this particular M&P. And yeah, like in a close-in environment, a 230 grain bullet, a baby could be upstairs asleep in the crib, and I could crank off a whole mag of this inside here in this room, and the baby ain't gonna wake up. Okay, so Does that say that this is movie quiet? Maybe not movie quiet in the sense of what you hear in the movies in Hollywood, because they use sounds that are a little bit more, let's just say, they're kind of doctoring those sounds to make them sound especially quiet. Or maybe they're taking something like this Tico, like an integral suppressed 22 with a really light subsonic round, and they're using that sound signature for something like this to make it sound extra quiet. Because, in the movies, it's got to be really, really quiet. It's got to be obviously quiet, right? Is that to say that this gun is not movie quiet? I don't know if I'd say movie quiet, but definitely operationally quiet. Let's put it that way. There's been many situations, especially you look at World War II, where early suppressor use was definitely in play. You had guns like the Well Rod. You had guns like some integral suppressed Stens that were out there that the British were using. You had the Delisle carbine, which is a 45 ACP infield, but was integral suppressed. Very, very quiet gun. So there were a lot of suppressed guns used in warfare, kind of as early on as possibly even World War I. I think they even had some suppressed machine guns in World War I, if I'm not mistaken. So it's not like the technology necessarily is new with suppressors. It's just they have kind of come a long way. But I wanted to answer that question because I thought it was such an interesting topic to talk about. And, are suppressors movie quiet? Generally, I would say holistically, no. They're not. I would say most suppressors are actually quite loud when used in conjunction with full power 308, 7.62 by 39, 5.56, any rifle round. Unless you're using a special round that's subsonic, they're all going to be loud, even with a suppressor. So at that point, you ask, well, what is the point of having a suppressor on a rifle that is actually quite loud with a supersonic bullet? Let's say, like for instance, my Remington 700 over there that has a suppressor on it. It's a 6.5 Creedmoor. Well, 6.5 Creedmoor is definitely supersonic. That's a long-range round. What could that suppressor then offer me if it's not movie quiet? Well, for one, it saves my hearing by making the report of the rifle considerably less loud. In fact, quite quiet at the shooter's ear. And that's what matters. We're using these suppressors for hearing protection to help save our hearing from a loud gunshot. Two, militarily, okay, what would be another use for a suppressor in a rifle or pistol that has a supersonic projectile? Well, two would be to hide the location, potentially, or at least greatly reduce the location of the shooter and the direction of the shot. Only a really well-trained marksman or shooter or sniper or something like that would even begin to know how to determine which direction a shot came from if you can't hear the report of the rifle. If you hear the supersonic crack of the rifle, all right, the round cracked, you listen to the sound after maybe you heard the round hit first, then you heard the crack, and you heard the direction the crack ran. It went like that. You can tell the direction of the expanding, crack of the round. And so a trained shooter, perhaps an untrained shooter in the moment, would have a round hit near them in a military environment and immediately panic, run for cover. A trained shooter, like a sniper, is immediately going to listen. He's going to be like, all right, what direction is this freaking shot coming from? And at least discern a general idea of which direction that shot came from, so you can take appropriate cover and make sure you're not hiding in plain sight, not realizing it. So, is that to say that a rifle with a suppressor and supersonic ammo is a useless tool? Absolutely not. It still will conceal generally the location of the shooter. It just may not necessarily completely make the round as quiet as it could be if it had a subsonic round. So the short answer is yes, suppressors can be very movie quiet with the appropriate combination of ammo, suppressor, action type, things like that. All right, say for instance, if we took this same Tico barrel, the integral suppressed barrel, and we put it on a Ruger 1022, a semi-automatic, would it be as quiet as this bolt action right here, right? No, it would not. You're going to hear that bolt reciprocating when the gun shoots. Now, you could reach up and hold the bolt shut with your thumb and treat it like a bolt action. Sure. And that's a viable option as well. So, anyway, it's always going to be a combination of the action type, the suppressor design, how much volume you have, and the ammunition that you use. Yes, suppressors can be movie quiet as we see in the movies. However, it does require a very specific set of circumstances. So Anyway, I hope this video was helpful. Thank you so much for the questions. I have many more videos on the way. Thank you all so much. We'll see you soon.